Okay guys, let's solve linear inequalities in one variable. Okay, you have seen these symbols before. This one, this symbol right here, means less than. Read it from the left to the right. On the left side it's smaller, so you're going to use the word less than. Is less than. Use that sign right there. Okay, so look at the next one. It's not that different except it's got this little line underneath it, and that means is less than or equal to. And then again, read this next one, left or right. The bigger side is on the left, so that one is greater than, and then you've got the little symbol underneath, that's is greater than or equal to. Okay, so on this problem right here, we are going to graph the values of x. Notice how it says x is greater than -2. So we're going to graph all the values that are greater than -2. So I'm going to make a number line here. And I'm going to put the number that I'm using in the middle. Now, to the right of -2 is -1. Remember, with the negatives, they go in reverse order. So now, here's what you need to know. For greater than and less than, you have to use an open circle. For greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, you have to use a closed circle. Now, what the open circle means is we want everything around this number, or to the right or to the left, depending on which one you're doing, but you don't want to include that particular number. With the closed circle, you want to include that particular number. So in this case, we've got x is greater than -2. So I'm going to put an open circle at -2. That means don't include -2. And then I draw the line of the places that we include all of the possible answers or solutions. So all of the numbers that are greater than -2 are where this line is. Notice how the line is, and you don't really have to darken it in like I am a lot, but you do need to make it noticeable. And you do have to put the arrow on the end of the line. If you don't put the arrow, then that means that you're not including anything beyond that. And we can't draw the entire number line out to positive infinity. But the arrow indicates that it does go all the way out to positive infinity. So this line right here means I want all of these even decimals that are just greater than -2. So -1.99999, that's greater than -2, and I want to include that. So a lot of people, their misconception is that we're only dealing with whole numbers here, but we're actually dealing with all of those little fractions in between, or decimals in between. Okay, what this page says is if I have that A is less than B, then if I add the number C to A and I add the number C to B, that it still is going to be less than. A plus C is still going to be less than B plus C. That's the addition property of inequality. Okay, I'm going to explain this one in an example because this page, it's kind of wordy and somewhat hard to understand. So I'm going to explain this one in just a second, but you might want to pause your video right now and read through this. Okay, what that last page said was that if I have A greater than B, if I were to multiply both sides by a negative number, so if I were to multiply, let's say by -1, then what I would get is I would get -A and I would get -B, but the key thing here is flipping your sign. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must flip your sign. Here's why. Okay, so let's say that I have five and 2. Okay, we all know that 5 is greater than 2. Everybody can agree on that. So let's say that I multiply both sides by a -1. And it could be -2, it doesn't matter. It could be any negative number. So when I multiply 5 times -1, I get -5. When I multiply 2 by -1, I get -2. Now which number is greater? -2 is greater than -5. So notice I flipped my sign. Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must flip your sign. That's really the hardest thing for people to understand about inequalities. Okay, so now let's take a look at this problem. 2x minus 3 is less than 7. So if this were just a plain old equal sign, we would start out by adding 3 to both sides. So I get 2x on the left side is less than 7 plus 3 is 10. So now I have to divide both sides by 2. So x is less than 5. So now we want to draw the graph of this. I'm going to put 5 in the middle. To the right of 5 is 6. To the left of 5 is 4. I have an open circle at 5. That means I don't include 5 in my solution, but it's everything less than 5, and so everything less than 5 is to the left. Don't forget your arrow. Okay, with this problem right here, 2x minus 5 is greater than 6x plus 3. Okay, I've been teaching you all along that we need to get our variables on the same side. So I'm going to start by subtracting 2x from both sides. Notice how I put the like terms underneath each other. 2x minus 2x is 0. What's left on the left-hand side is -5 is greater than 6x minus 2x is 4x. Now we want to move everything away from our x or our variable, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And whenever I subtract 3 from a -5, I get -8 is greater than. This over here went away, so I'm left with 4x. Now in order to get the x by itself, I have to divide by 4 on both sides. So I get that -2. I did not divide by a negative number, so I'm not going to flip my sign. Is greater than x. What I want you to understand is notice how the small side is pointing towards the x. This right here is the same as this right here. Those are the same thing, just written in the other order. And I really like this order better because this order I can see easily that whenever I graph it on a number line, my arrow points to the left. Anytime your variable is on the left side, then your arrow should point in the same direction as your inequality symbol. So I would have an open circle at -2 and that points to the left. Those are all the numbers that are less than -2. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. 3 times x minus 2 is less than 5x minus 3. All right, first thing we need to do with this problem is we need to distribute. So I've got 3x minus 6 is less than 5x minus 3. And again, I always move my smaller variable over to my larger It keeps me from having to deal with negatives, but in this case, I'm actually going to do it the other way around so that you see that I have to flip my sign here. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. What's 3x minus 5x? It's negative 2x. I would add 6 to both sides. So I get negative 2x is less than 3. Now I have to divide both sides by negative 2. I just divided by a negative number. So I've got x is now greater than negative 3 halves. Now I'm going to rewrite this up here. X is greater than negative 1 1/2 because sometimes that's easier to graph whenever you turn it into a mixed number. So I'm going to put 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So notice I stuck with the whole numbers. Because I can easily find negative 1 1/2. It's in between negative 1 and negative 2. I have an open circle there. And I just estimated where negative 1 1/2 was. My arrow is pointing to the right on my inequality. So this, I don't know where that line came from. Sorry, guys. So this arrow has to point to the right. Okay? Open circle, though. Make sure that you have an open circle here. Okay, for this problem right here, the easiest thing to do, unless you just really enjoy dealing with fractions, easiest thing to do is to get rid of your fractions. So I'm going to multiply by the common denominator, which between 3, 2, and 6 is 6. Now, if you're not strong with fractions, this is where you may want to grab your calculator and multiply. 6 times 2/3 is 4, but don't forget your W there. 6 times 1/2 is 3, is less than or equal to. 6 times 5/6 is 5. Notice I distributed that 6 times every single term in this problem. Now we actually get something that's not terrible to work with. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. 4w is less than or equal to 2. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 4, but I do not flip my sign because I'm not dividing by a negative number. And I'm going to reduce as well, so I'm going to write it up here. W is less than or equal to 1/2. So when I graph this, I'm going to put a closed circle because I have the equal to symbol underneath at 1/2, which is halfway between 0 and 1. It points to the left, so my arrow down here is going to point to the left. That line and that dot represents all of your possible solutions.